All right, so we are going to learn React today. I'm also learning it, so I'm not sure how much I know. I know how to work with it, but I don't know theory or some deeper advanced concepts that React has. So this is reactjs.org. I just click get started. Now we are getting started. Okay, React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. So there's a difference between library and a framework. A framework is something that does some heavy lifting for you. A library is something that you can just call a function. It will expose some functions, it will expose some values if it can, and then you will just use them, you will just call them, and that's it. There is, though internally it does heavy lifting for you, DOM manipulation and stuff, it's still a library. Uh, okay, that's the difference that I have, library versus framework. Learn what React is all about on our homepage or in tutorial. Okay, so let's see what their homepage is, which is this. So basically, they have declarative. React makes it painless to create interactive UIs. Okay. Design simple views for each state in your application, and React will efficiently update and render just the right components when your data changes. Design simple views for each state. Okay. Basically, whatever state your application is in, you will just design a view for it, and then React will automatically update it. It says efficiently because I heard that when React updates DOM, it sort of does it lazily. Like if you have multiple DOM updates, it will bunch them together. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I have heard about that. That's where the efficient part comes from. Render just the right components when your data changes. Right. So because you have already defined that on which data what my UI should look like, right? So only those things will be changed. And React is component based, we can see here. So that's what that component part come from. Declarative views make your code more predictable and easier to debug. Declarative views make your code more predictable and easier to debug. All right, so basically you declare that when data is X, I want to show this, and when data is Y, I want to show this, and then it makes it easier for developer to reason about it. That's the declarative part. There is another which is imperative. I'm not sure how can I differentiate here with imperative views and declarative views. My guess would be here you declare that on when the conditions are these, show this, and it doesn't care how you get there. Whenever the conditions would be true, it will just render the view. And imperative, you make sure that how to get to that those conditions basically. So it's like C versus Haskell, for example. Okay, so it's component based. This was a big. This is a big salient for React. Is that everything is component. You can create small component and then just reuse it, and they manage their own state. So neither their parent nor their children know about the state of a component, and React would like you to keep it that way, right? And then when you have small component, which can just basically which is self-contained, and then when you are composing them, everything is self-contained and they're still interactive, so you can make complex UIs out of that. So that's what it is, built encapsulated components that manage their own state, then compose them to make complex UIs. Since component logic is written in JavaScript instead of templates, you can easily pass rich data through your app and keep state of the DOM. So basically what this means is that so for example there are some templating libraries, for example Dust, right? And what happens is that you have to create a template in some other language which is for sort of language, for example Dust.js, and then you have to put your conditional logic for views in that language, and then it becomes harder to think about, right, like what's happening there. And here is just, since it's JavaScript, you can pass your objects, you can pass JavaScript values, and it's easier to reason about by a JavaScript developer. That's what that means. Okay, so learn once, write everywhere. Okay, so this is okay. So the thing with do once and like do something once and then it will automatically be taken care of everywhere is sort of a like Java thing. Java was, I think, the first language we said if you write Java code, you can run it on any device, and then that's why they had those 3.1 billion device advertisement in Java. I think till 8 it was there. I'm not sure, but it's the same thing. You learn React once, and there are other things where you can use React, such as React Native. I don't think that this is 100% applicable because in React Native, there I'm pretty sure that there will be some other things that you would have to do than just React. React is a tiny library, I think 100 KB or something, and when compressed, it goes to 32 KB, and that's pretty much it. Right. So the thing is, so it says that we don't make assumptions about the rest of your technology stack, so you can develop new features in React without rewriting existing code. This is true, as in you can literally write React applications with any other technological stack, right? Whatever you want, you can have that. For example, Redux or Flux or whatever, basically, and it will still work. It's a tiny library which does one thing very well, and that's what React stands for. You can just learn React, and then you can use it in React Native. You can make code render on server instead of client so that it's faster, and also you can do SEO better if you are doing the React server side compilation. So let's see some examples. So if you remember, we are still in getting started page. We are tracing our home page, and then we try to look into the tutorial, right? So simple component. Okay, React components implement a render method. So this is one important thing that we would have to keep in mind, that there's always a render method. This render method renders your UI, right? And it takes data input and it returns whatever your UI. So basically the return is whatever UI you want to see on the page, and you would have to pass some inputs to it. There are two ways to do it. Let's see what does it say. So this example uses an XML like syntax called JSX, right? This is the XML like syntax they are talking about. So if you see that this is JavaScript, this is ES6 code, a simple class hello message. It's extending react.component. So this is its superclass. And though they are not using a constructor here, they're using their props directly. This render function is what will return your UI, and this is just a simple function, simple class function. And here you are returning return. This is the stuff that you have to return. It's always in parentheses, open and close, and then there's always this HTML kind of thing. This HTML kind of thing is JSX in this case. And then there's a DOM renderer. Basically, you have to add this to DOM. You can manipulate, you can create your objects anywhere you want. Until you inject them into your DOM, they won't be visible, right? So React has a library for that, which is React DOM, and there you just render the component. This is the component now, hello message, and then you are passing a value Taylor inside a attribute named name, and this is being used. So these are called properties in React, and this is being used here. This dot props dot name. Props is just a name that they choose instead of properties, which just says some keystrokes. Other than that, it's just properties. Read it when you're reading it. Read inside your head that it's a properties of this component. And then this function call entails another thing, which is where do you want to render it. So this hello message will be rendered wherever you have told it. So there must be a hello example. Let's see if there's a hello example ID. Let's close this. Let's close this. And if you see, there indeed is a div with the ID hello example, and that's what hello example means here. So basically this is document.getElementID, and that's pretty much it. So for example, if I do this thing, right, I'll get this. You can see it, right? All right. So JSX is optional and not required to use React. I think I missed this line. Input data that is passed into a component can be accessed by render via this.props. Yeah, so as I said, this was the input data. These are properties, property key, property value, attribute value. And these are passed as props to this class, this component. And this is like this dot props dot whatever the key was. So here it was name, so you get Taylor there. we can edit it. So let's say Taylor Durden, right? So you can see that it's getting updated here. So this is React's benefit. It's always on kind of thing. Like you edit something and then you can see it multiple times. You can also do one more crazy thing. For example, if I do this, right, and I do this, you can still see it, and I can just copy paste it. Okay, right, and let's call it what do you call it? Terminator, right? Terminator 2, right? So you can see that you are able to see that. So basically, these are just components. They don't care how many times you repeat them because it has its own props name internally, and that's what matters. We can get rid of these duplications from here if we just do this, right? It still works. Okay, a stateful component. So if you see there's no state here, it doesn't remember who Taylor is or who Terminator is. It doesn't remember any of the values. This is stateless. You can just copy paste it anywhere and it will work. So for example, if I just do this, it still will work, right? It just say hello because this props name were not passed to it. In stateful, there will be a state. It will remember. For example, in addition to take, okay, let's read it. Sorry. In addition to taking input data accessed via this dot props, a component can maintain internal state data accessed via this dot state. When a component state data changes, the rendered markup will be updated by re-invoking render. So what does it mean? So you can take input data, which is via props. We looked at it. So these are its props basically. And so you can also have another prop actually. Let me, do I want to do that? No, we'll do it later, okay. So I wanted to basically color this Terminator. We could have done that, but I want to do it later, not now. So component can maintain internal state data, and this is accessed via this dot state. You can see it here. Now, if you remember, I mentioned that it's not using any constructor. This component is not using any constructor and not passing any values to its superclass. Here we are. So basically, there's a timer constructor, timer component, and this class extends react.component, and it does have a constructor. Constructor gets passed a value which is properties, and then you have to call the super props because you want to give these properties to your react.component basically. And this dot state, now this is a variable that we were talking about. This makes it stateful. If we are not using it, then this is just a dead code. Since we are going to use it, this is what the state is, right? And this is always called state. It's better if you call state. I'm pretty sure you can hack it to call slate or whatever, but just keep it state. This dot state is equal to seconds. These are the values that will be there. So this is seconds. You can also have, say, something like minutes. We will check later what minutes mean. So if you see there was some value there, as soon as I updated it, React re-renders the whole thing. That's this part. When a component state data changes, the rendered markup will be updated by re-invoking render. So what will happen basically, there's a render function, and we have discussed that render function is basically the UI, whatever UI you want to show. So what happens that if I change this state ever, for example, I change this state to 0, and the render function will be called again, right? And here it will read this dot state dot seconds. The thing is, the seconds is always 0. So even if I do say 1000, it will always start from there, right? This is 10,000, it will always start from there. And this is what this line meant. When a component state data changes, then render markup will be updated by re-invoking render. All right, so let's see what are the functions there. So one is constructor, which is just constructing the object. Then there's a tick function. We'll forget this for now, what it does. There's a component did mount, and there's a component will unmount, and there's a render function. So every component has to have a render function. This function always returns you UI. So basically, let me write now. Returns UI must function right? This must function in a component. So these are class-based component. You will see that there is a function-based component also. These are called lifecycle events, where this is a part of lifecycle. And by name, so this is one cool thing with React, that their name are pretty much self-explanatory. It says component did mount. When you read it, it literally says component did mount, which is like you had a component and you mounted it in the DOM and or somewhere, but it has been mounted. And then you can do some things that you want to do then. And there's a component will unmount. As the name suggests, when component is just about to be unmounted, maybe taken off the DOM, it will be called, right? And this is also part of lifecycle. This is component lifecycle, and here also this is a component lifecycle. Okay, all right. And so they are doing something, we will see. And there's a tick function. This is normal class syntax. In a class in JavaScript, you can have a function like this. And but now let's see what these functions do. Constructor, we know it calls super, and then it creates a state. This is state creation, basically. State creation, all right. And then there's a tick. This is something that we can decipher it. It uses a set state function. Whenever you have a state, do not update it directly. If you do this, where did it go? If you do this dot state is equal to seconds 1, this is bad. This is really bad, right? Do not do this. Right? Always. So if you see, even if I'm doing seconds 10 or 100, it doesn't care. It starts from 1 and then keep going, right? The reason is you shouldn't use state directly. You should not update state directly. You should always update state via set state function. And this is a updating state. Do not update state directly. Right, so what it does is basically this is a function which React knows, and then you are passing state to it. This is done automatically, and all it will do basically, this is a function. This is a new ES6 function syntax, and here what you are doing basically, you're returning an object, and since you are going to return it, you have to put it in the bracket here, parenthesis here, and then you are just updating the state. So for example, state is this, here's this. You can also do something like, since we already have minutes in it, you can also do state dot minutes state 60, right? And let's see the minutes also. Minutes, this dot state dot minutes. There's 0 minutes, and at 60 we'll see that it's 1 minute, right? Okay. What else? Okay, so what we are doing basically here is that we are telling that there's a function that React has, which is set state. We are telling it that we are passing you a function, right? And all you have to do is update the state like this. And when you have done, React will automatically update it here in the DOM. So for example, then next function is component did mount. How is this function getting called multiple times every second? That is taken care here. So in component did mount, after you have mounted the component, this function has not been called once at all. Your state has been set so far. What you're going to do is you're going to create a variable, this dot interval, which will be accessible throughout this class. And then you're going to say that basically you're going to use set interval API. You can read up on it in MDN, basically MDN. What was that? Set interval. I think I should be using. I'm not, okay. Windows timers, Windows set interval. Let's see, Windows set interval. I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. And why is it in Chinese? I have no idea. Okay, let's do set interval. Oh, this is weird. Such a weird thing. Okay. This is weird. Anyway, you can look up set interval. Uh, it takes a function and then it takes time in milliseconds. So minutes has not been updated. State dot minutes percentage 60. This look like this should work. Minutes. Am I missing something? Okay. So it should be seconds actually. And this is this is wrong because let's do it divide by 60. Yeah, this is also wrong. Basically what I want to do is when state dot seconds divisible by 60 is equal to 0, I want to do a state dot minutes plus 1, or I just want to return a state dot minutes. Right, make sense? And let's not start from 0. Let's start minutes from -1, right? Right, because we are starting seconds from 0 and then 0 divided by 60 is 0, and so it just updates a minute. Here it will be this. So at 60 we will get another minute. Okay, all right, that was a logical misstep basically. So here we are calling set interval API, and then it's just you're saying that at every 1 second just call this function. That's pretty much it. Just call tick function at every second. Now what happens, basically every second this function will be called and it will be adding 1 to the seconds, and if seconds are 60 it will be adding 1 to minutes. Right, let's see at 60. And there's another function which is component will unmount. This is when your component is getting out of DOM, I guess. I'm not sure about what mounting means. I'm guessing, yeah, so at 61 it got 1. Anyway, right. And right. That's it. Whenever component will unmount will be called, this function will be called, which is basically removing this interval, so it will stop working for every second. All right, the rest is the same. You can have 2 timers as we discussed. All you have to do is basically put them in a div and just very weird copy paste mechanism, right? And just div and it works. It's pretty much that. An application. Okay, so this is a whole application. We can go over it quickly, but I would like to stop here first.